Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Mikkel Thorup, and this is the Expat Money Show. Today, I am on set in Asuncion, Paraguay, with my very good friend, Markus. Amann, we're going to be having a conversation about all things Paraguay. Markus, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mikkel. Hello.
So let's take a minute and kind of walk us through your backstory. How did an Austrian end up in Paraguay?
So when I was finishing high school, basically, I started off studying. My parents wanted me to work in a bank in Austria. And I didn't like that. So I always felt like more doing my own thing would be better. And during university, I met a friend. He was working for me. I had a company during that time, doing parties and these kind of stuff because I was young, 19, 20 years old. And his father bought a farm in the Chaco in Paraguay. And maybe 2 years, 3 years in studying, his father said to his son, you have to go and see the cattle farm in the Paraguay in Chaco, close to Bolivia. And he didn't want to go alone. So he basically kind of told me like, come with me. I don't want to go there. It's so far off. And I really, at the time, I knew Paraguay was in South America, but I, to be honest, I really had to double check on the maps, like, where is it exactly? And okay, so we went there. And it was, of course, a completely different environment. So I have, at the time, I knew Europe, I knew the US, but I haven't been to Africa, South America, or these kind of third world Asian countries. So for me, it was completely different. And it was fascinating at the same time because there was so much to do. You could immediately see and tell in these type of countries, everything is missing, And that was maybe almost 20 years ago. So the first time I came here was 2005. It was in January. It was super hot. We went to the Chaco to see the farm. And I will never forget that because at the time, the people working at the farm, there was a football. I remember there was I don't know, it wasn't a World Cup, I think, but there was some famous football match going on and they had a TV outside, 50 degrees, and they were watching the football game. And when the commercials set in, there was a Godzilla movie coming into the cinema. They had a trailer of the Godzilla movie there. And then suddenly everybody got very quiet. And it was like, there were like 10 people, they were watching the game, very excited. And suddenly after the Godzilla trailer, everybody was so quiet and they started to talk in Guarani, the native language. And then one of the guy comes over to me, he was very shy and he was very worried. And he asked me if these type of animals do still exist in Europe and if they have to be concerned.
Amazing.
So, and that was for me very it was super, you can imagine, so you could really tell what's going on here. So it's it was so different. Everything was so culture-wise different. And at the same time, it was fascinating.
No, that's amazing. And okay, so you came down here about 20 years ago with your friend. You didn't have a lot of understanding about Paraguay. What was it though that really made you decide okay, you wanted to stay or you wanted to continue on because you saw all of the opportunities here? What did that look like?
Not at the time. I saw the opportunity, but I was quite young. Mm-hmm. And so my friend came here after finishing university. He went down here to basically take care of the farm and build up this business. And he offered me, if you want to come down here, you can stay in my house. And for me, it was okay, I knew I wanted to go somewhere. And it was kind of the easiest choice. It was kind of the only country I've been to in this type of emerging environment. My friend was here. We had Spanish at the university, so I could speak a little bit of Spanish. Not much, but a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it was it felt like the safest option in that sense. So I came down here and started to get to know the country. So I spent about 6 months here.
On that first visit?
No, it was, the first visit was 3 weeks.
Okay.
No, when he moved here,
yep.
So maybe 1 year later, I came down here and I spent about 6-8 months here trying to set something up. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I was trying to get moving. And in the end, it didn't work out because it was also maybe my fault at the time. I was young, I was inexperienced, insecure, and people didn't take me serious because you come from outside, you're here, and unless you put a lot of money on the table or something like that, it's they don't care, the locals here. And it was this type of environment. I was driving around, I got to know the city. My Spanish kept improving, but I couldn't really like get something going. And after about half a year, I had a car accident. My friend was at the farm, so there was no cell phone signal or something like that. And I was driving home at night to his house, and a guy, 17 years old, drunk, crossed the road right in front of my car, and I hit him. And, imagine my Spanish wasn't that good, and I didn't even know how to call an ambulance. I was very lucky because it was in front of a gas station, so there were people there, they called an ambulance. And the whole experience, again, was very surreal because the ambulance arrives, they don't do anything. So they come and ask, are you going to pay for everything? Otherwise, nothing's going to happen,
Wow.
I said, okay, sure, please, whatever, like do what you can. It was like, at the time I was maybe 23 years old, a full shock. I never had experienced something like this before. Then the police arrives. And I remember, they came straight towards me. Did you know the victim? So basically, they didn't even assume it was an accident. The first question was already basically, this could have been some kind of, I don't know, assassination attempt or some act of vengeance or something like that. And it was super strange. Then, of course, the people were very nice around because they saw it and they gave me their passport numbers to have some witnesses and stuff. I had to go to the police station. And so I was starting to call people. My friend was not available. He was in the farm. So I managed to call another friend. He came with a lawyer because at the time, I didn't know that the law basically says when something like this happens, you're not allowed to leave the police station until it's clear if the victim survives or not.
Okay.
So they took him to the hospital, but I couldn't go there.
Sure.
And at the same time, at the hospital, they didn't perform any kind of operation because you need to go and purchase all the stuff. So you literally need to send someone to the pharmacy to purchase whatever the doctor needs, and then they perform the operation. So my friend and the lawyer, basically after talking to the police, they went there, took care of that stuff at the hospital. And then we got a call. And first they said the victim died. And I remember for me, this was super horrible, I was looking like in an empty kind of space and felt horrible. Then the father came of the victim. And of course, you can imagine his son has been in a car accident. I was the driver. And about 2 hours later, they call again from the hospital, telling the police, no, they made a mistake. He survived. They confused the victims. Oh, and he survived, and they already performed the operation, and they talked to him, and he already admitted it was his fault. He was trying to cross the street to go home. He was drunk, so he didn't basically calculate right the distance. And yeah, so it was a relief. It was really a relief. But basically the whole day was, I remember the sun going up, in the morning, and then the sun coming down, and I don't really know what happened in between. It was a super strange experience. But what happened is after that, it was kind of traumatizing. So I'm going that road every day back and forth. And I really felt like, no, I have to go, So I basically left the country. I went back to Austria for 1.5 years, leaving everything behind here. And it felt like I failed, And about 1.5 years later, my mother invited me and my sister to a cruise into the Antarctic. So I went there, and we went from Ushuaia to the Antarctic by cruise ship. And on the way back, I basically went from Buenos Aires to Asuncion again, to Paraguay, because I haven't been here 1.5 years, and I had to basically take a look and see what's still left here, what I have to do, like taking care of things. And when I came back here, I really felt like it can't be that I fail here. I was used to be successful even early age. Everything always worked out, and suddenly this happened. So it was like a bam. Basically, you cannot pull off. You can do it in Austria, but you cannot do it in Paraguay, kind of thing. And it didn't feel good. And at the same time, I really noticed that the country was picking up in a different pace.
Okay.
That was 2009, in January 2009, and everything started growing. You saw already construction starting, and you saw the prices. I remember 1.5 years before, basically all these signs, sale or whatever, rent, everything was half as expensive, and suddenly it doubled. And that was the time when I really decided, okay, I'm going all in now in this country, and basically turn my faith around and put a stamp onto this project here, Paraguay. And so it was 2 weeks I've been here. And right there I decided, okay, I purchase a land and I'm going to go forward.
And the land that you purchased, was that in that same area? Did you have to continue to drive that road, or did you still avoid that?
Kind of, it was a very fine, a small, it was very close, because I had agreed to purchase a land, and it was on Aviadores del Chaco. That was the road that was supposed to be like coming in from the airport. And we were supposed to sign at the notary, and the next day my flight was back to Austria, because so I had to go back, take some stuff, and then basically come here and go all in here. That was the plan. And one day before we were supposed to sign, on the same day I think it was, they called me and they asked for 20% more. But it was already agreed,
In writing or in verbal?
No, the notary already had everything prepared. It was verbally agreed. Everything was ready, set up. We just needed to go to sign.
Yeah.
And instead of going to the sign, they asked to change last minute and asked for 20% more. And I really felt like in that moment, no, this country is not for me. I cannot do it. And I was going to dinner, and it was like my last dinner in Paraguay, because the next morning my flight was leaving. And I would never come back. I already had that in that moment decided. And during dinner, I got a call from a real estate agent. Until now, I don't even know how he knew that I was looking for land. But that's how small the country is structured. So he had my number. He called me. I heard you want a land. Didn't work out. I have another one. It's even closer, next to the Sheraton Hotel, Shopping del Sol.
So it was downtown here in the city?
In the main area, yeah.
Gotcha.
But the other one was like double the size. It was much bigger, but much better located. And I liked it better, actually, than the other one, but it was bigger. And I said, yeah, okay, no problem. The only problem is tomorrow noon, I'm flying back to Austria. So what we can do is we can go there to the seller's office at 8 o'clock, tell him if we have an agreement until 10. I'm going to purchase it, and then I'm doing what I wanted to do. Otherwise, I'll never come back here.
Yeah.
And that's what
happened. So you just
happened.
kind of left it up to fate at that point.
I did. And we went there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was super lucky because the seller was from Spain. And he has been here about 35, 40 years. And he kind of told me like similar experience, how difficult it was at the beginning until you get to know people, until you gain some trust. And he kind of had some faith in me. So we shook hands, we agreed on a deal, because at that moment, there was not much I could do. I could tell him, okay, listen, I give you my word. I'll be back in 1 month. Then we sign the paperwork, I do the payment, and we move forward. Do you want to do it or not? And he agreed. And we both kept our word. And so I came back 1 month later. I purchased a much bigger land than I actually wanted to purchase. And it was much better located. And I just moved forward, from there on.
So what was that first project? What did that first piece of land, which development did that turn into?
So I purchased it, not really. I mean, when I was doing parties and stuff during university,
Sure.
So at the time I was 27 or something like that. So I felt like maybe I do a bar or do a nightclub or kind of something like this. So it was a completely different idea that I had in mind. But the guy was a very important real estate tycoon down here already at the time. And he basically had a building project. And he said, listen, I purchased this to build an NH hotel from the Spanish hotel chain.
Sure.
So the CEO of the hotel came down to Paraguay, and he didn't like the land. He didn't like it.
Okay.
He said, no, we don't do it here. Purchase another one. And so he put it on sale and purchased another one, even a bigger one. But they already did a preliminary project for building 7 stories, everything. And he gave that to me.
So you purchased the land from him, and he basically gave you all of the work that they had done in advance.
So that kind of inspired me, like, okay, like if they do that, hotels are more closed and this, so maybe I do something bigger, And it was around 5,000 square meters. It was quite big at the time.
Big.
That was my first project. And which wasn't so easy at the same time, because when I went to all the construction companies to basically get an offer for the construction, nobody gave me one. It was the same experience, I went there like, can you build? Everybody said yes, and nothing ever happened. I never had an offer. So I went back to the seller and said, listen, I want to build. Nobody, I don't even have an offer. Now it's been 3 months. I don't know what to do here. And then he called some of the people. And of course that changed everything, because then suddenly they took it more serious, and suddenly I got the offer, and then I kept it going.
Wow. So it really highlights who you know is going to be the number one, especially in a close-knit society like this, I think.
Yes, but it changed a lot. That was 15 years ago. Now it's much more open. There are much more people. All these young generation grew up. So it's a more mixed country now, environment, a lot of expats coming in. So now it changed. But at the time, it was super closed, with these couple of families. And they didn't really, at that time, it felt like they didn't want people to come in. And now it changed a lot. Now it's like they want people to come in.
That's definitely the feeling I get about Paraguay.
At the time, it was more like, we are afraid, like, and everybody looked, it was like always fishy, they looked at you like, maybe this is some kind of, I don't know, Russian oligarch or something shady or whatever, these type, they didn't really know how to relate to the foreign. Now it changed, because now they have a lot of hotels, a lot of people coming in, international events, and a lot of people migrating from all the countries. Now the perception changed completely. So it had a drastic U-turn in the last 15 years. And then all these construction booms set in. It was right after the financial crisis. So 2009 onwards, basically, Paraguay experienced a big boom of real estate development. And I got very lucky, because I was there at the early stage. So basically I did the first office building right there on that road. And that was before all the other bigger projects came across, and they basically built around me. So I was very, very lucky, and a lot of coincidence, and being right there at the right time.
Do you still own that building, or you ended up selling it off?
No, I sold it about almost 10 years ago, actually. The reason I sold it, because at that time I started to see the opportunity of Nueva Asuncion on the other side of the river. And I felt like I should really go, let's say, almost all in on the other side. And so I decided to sell a bunch of properties here in the city to invest on the other side of the river and be an early investor over there.
But we'll get into Nueva Asuncion in a little bit, because that's like a whole other story. But I want to kind of bridge the gap between the very early days and Nueva Asuncion, because you have gone on and done additional buildings. So I guess when you went over to Nueva Asuncion, did you continue to develop in the capital, in the downtown here?
Yes. Actually, the same seller who sold me my first land, he brought me to Nueva Asuncion at the time.
Okay.
He brought me there because he at the same time purchased land there 40 years ago.
You've told me about this gentleman before.
Waiting for the bridge that didn't come.
Right.
So that's how I got to know it. And that was like, it was the same kind of, it seeded this interest, it grew little by little. But at the same time, of course, I kept building here. So because it was this real estate boom, and at that time, there were not so many real estate developers here. And I was one of the biggest.
Wow.
So we did different other buildings here in Asuncion, worked out fine. And then the Argentinians came in, Spanish came in, now Bolivians are coming in. So now you have Uruguayans coming in, and Paraguayans also, some started to build. So now it's a different game, a lot of people. And also later on, bigger money was coming in, bigger investors from other countries. And so the scale got much bigger, because at the time when I did 7 stories, that was the highest building on that road. And that was the maximum that was allowed. Then they changed that, and now you have 20, 30, 50, whatever kind of story buildings. But this boom started basically 2019. Same with the hotels, because they didn't have a lot of hotels at the time. It was quite expensive, actually, the hotels here, because there was not enough offer. And so they built a bunch of hotels, and that changed all that. And now you have a much better developed city than it used to be 15 years ago.
Well, because we've been up to your building where you live, and you've got the helipad up there, and that's certainly higher than 7 stories. Even the thought of being up there on the helipad still makes my stomach a little bit tingle. It's a pretty wild experience.
Well, this one, we purchased the land 2012, I think, and we started building 2013, and it was 3 years. So 2016 it was finished. And at the time, it was the highest apartment building in that area. And it has the helipad on top. That's on the 28th floor. Mm-hmm. And still until today, it's one of the higher buildings. But now you have a couple of other buildings even higher around. But at the time, it was one of the highest. Yeah. And it also, they were considering very risky because all the construction companies were not experienced at the time to do this type of scale. You know, they didn't have the cranes, for example. When I remember my first 7-story building, they were, for all the concrete and everything, they didn't have all the structural elements. So it was all basically improvised and made by, they cut the wood and literally made it like this. You know, there was no purchased steel, whatever kind of frames and stuff. They didn't have that. There was no crane at the time for the 7-story. They didn't exist.
And we're not talking 50 years ago, 80 years ago. We're talking 15 years ago, 1-5.
Yeah. And then because of the financial crisis, when Spain basically got into a lot of trouble with all the construction, a lot of Spanish companies sold their stuff, all the cranes, all the machinery and everything, and a lot of it went to Paraguay as well.
Okay.
So this is when they purchased all that stuff and started to get the equipment and everything. Even they brought know-how in, you know, engineers from Spain came over, Spanish companies came over, and then they started to build. And then these all kind of went into the society. And now they're doing a very good job here when it comes to high-rise construction. But 15 years ago, it was kind of newish.
Sure. See, I think it's super interesting because I am not the type of investor or the type of person who is going to be the absolute early investor, like the very beginning trailblazer. I have massive respect for people like you who can really see the future and go all in on something. I am very cautious and I watch for a long time. And then when I feel like it's at that inflection point, that's when I get in and I have the upside potential in front of me, but very little downside, like as little downside as humanly possible. Like I'm just very, very careful and very pragmatic on these types of things.
I would do it the same way. I think it's a much better approach because what I did at the time was completely careless. First of all, I didn't travel around. I didn't see any of the other neighboring countries. When I started traveling, it was much later. I just went here because my friend was here. And the other thing was, it was like, you know, because of this personal experience, I didn't want to fail. It was like I kind of obliged myself to do it. But there was no real like factor or strategic calculation or something like that. I think it was a lot of coincidence, a lot of luck. Of course, a lot of work to put in.
Yeah, grit and determination for sure.
But these kind of risk reward, I think what you're doing is much better. I think it gives much better results. I got lucky here, but I think it was actually looking backwards, it was too much risk. And I didn't know the risks, you know, because I wasn't aware, because I was young and I just straight into it kind of, and luckily it worked out, you know.
Yeah.
But it was looking backwards, it was too risky. I think what you're doing is much better.
And I think that, you know, for everybody who's listening today, we're not telling your story, so it's like, okay, everyone should go and try to replicate the exact same thing because, you know, that is a certain period of time at a certain thing that happens, certain events that kind of lined up, but that's very difficult to replicate.
Yes, yes. And now you see different countries and basically, because at the same time, you know, Paraguay was starting to pick up, for example, Panama did the same basically kind of development, but even a scale much bigger.
Yep.
Then also Peru and other countries, Bolivia as well. So everybody had its moment. But now it feels like Paraguay has found a kind of environment. It has kind of a stable ground now to grow even further because the tax regime is very favorable. The migration laws are very favorable. Now they understood they need the people from outside. They want the migrants here. They want them to invest. And now it really looks like, as you just mentioned, now it looks like this first phase, risky phase is over. And now you can really create a stable economy here.
Exactly. That's what I'm seeing because I've been studying Paraguay for a very long time and watching the economics and watching the geopolitics and these types of things. But I only started pulling the trigger less than 2 years ago here. And I think this is the really sweet spot, you know, right now till the next few years. If you wait 10, 15 more years, I think all the money will be made here. I have a lot of people who come to me and ask me about Uruguay, and Uruguay is a beautiful country and, you know, very, very developed. And they kind of, the names sound the same, so sometimes people in their head seem to think that these are the same countries or very similar, and they're not at all. And the way I try to describe it is that Uruguay is already developed. They've already had all of this stuff happen. All the infrastructure is done. A lot of the money has already been made there. So if you're looking for a very nice lifestyle, then great, Uruguay's fantastic. But if you've got a little bit of patience and you're a little bit creative and you want to build something, Paraguay is where it's at. I think this is like the up and coming place.
Yeah, what I did after growing here, of course, I started looking around in all the other countries, traveling there, analyzing it. And in the end, basically, I really found for myself, actually, I'm at the right place. Because all the other countries had some growth, but suddenly something fell apart, turned around. During the pandemic, you saw a lot of reality in all the other countries as well. And I experienced it here. So it's not just being here. It's really like if you look all the data, basically the depth of the country, taxes and all that stuff, you can really see Paraguay has a very, very unique position to grow. Has the electricity, has all that stuff, has the grains. So looking at least in this continent, looking around the other countries, I didn't really invest into other countries except Bolivia. And that was also a risky kind of situation. Now we have difficulties there in Bolivia because of the whole environment. The Bolivians are coming here to Paraguay because the country has politically and certain instabilities with the currency. But here in Paraguay, it kept very stable, and looking into all the other countries, I really kept investing in Paraguay because I really feel this is the right place.
Yeah, that makes sense. How did you meet Gerald?
Well, Gerald, actually, my business partner, we met through his father. Because when I came here the first time, even in 2005, when I came here to visit my friend, we were supposed to stay at his brand new house. So they sent him, before we came, they sent him all the pictures and messages, like house is ready and great and whatever. So we came here, the house wasn't ready. There were not even windows in the house, nothing was ready. There was no floor, there was nothing. So, and Gerald was one of his father passed away. He was one of his father's best friends and the neighbor. So basically we went to Gerald's house, Gerald's father's house. So I stayed at Gerald's father's house without even knowing him at that time. And during the visits to Paraguay after that, I met Gerald's father, great guy. And through Gerald's father, I think it was 2000, maybe 10, 11, I met Gerald. And he came down here to help his father to organize the farms. And he wanted to do something in Paraguay. So we met, we connected, we had a very good understanding. And then we decided to do a real estate company, development company together, an investment company together. And the building with the heliport on top, we did together. That was our first project, our first building. And yeah, it was great.
It's amazing to watch the dynamic between the two of you, because I really see a mentor-mentee type of relationship. And I speak with Gerald privately and have had dinner with him and things like that. And when he talks about you, his face like lights up. He looks at you, I swear, like a son or something. It's really amazing to watch. And I really like those types of relationships.
You know, when we met at the time, we had this type of relationship because I was younger. Sure. So now I'm much older. Gerald, he didn't really age a lot. You know, it's like it's been 15 years almost, but he's like the same. You know, it's the same guy. He didn't really age. Very active, like very smart, very interested in everything. So, and of course, we got to know each other much better. We travel around, we look into different countries, we analyze stuff. So we have a very, very good friendship and also business partner relationship. And it's a very good combination, you know, especially at the beginning, it was very important for me to have a bigger investor. It was like a backup kind of plan, like an insurance policy. And it felt like you're not alone with a big project like this, because at the time I felt like I was alone, you know. So that helped a lot in that sense. And it grew a lot into different types of investments we're doing together and also we're doing separately. Because we basically always talk and like, do we want to do it together? No, you do this, I do that. So, but we have a very good relationship, and it's a very good combination and a very good complementary type of, because we, in the end, like we have like 25 years in between each other. So it's like two generations
Sure.
kind of exchanging opinions and the way how they see the world.
Well, I think that there's not enough said about mentorship or working with people who are older or younger than you. You know, I've been very blessed in my life. I've had men who have been very generous with their time, who have really taught me so much. So I really respect this type of relationship. You know, my education was not a traditional sense of education. I didn't go through, you know, schools or anything like that. I left school very early. Mine was very experiential and very in this type of mentorship type of thing. So I really like to see these types of relationships. And it's a huge recommendation for younger people or for people who have kids to try to foster this or try to encourage this type of learning, because I think there's so much that we can learn from other generations, that not everything has to come from a blackboard or a textbook or a lecture or something like that. It can just be the day-to-day interactions.
Yeah. I personally, I like to listen a lot to people that have been successful, you know, in their field, because a lot of people give you a lot of advice or have a lot of opinions, but I always like to listen to people who have proven their case. And for example, Gerald is one of these people. He did an IPO. Was a very successful entrepreneur at the time, and he still is now. So basically, when he says something, I take it into consideration because
100%.
he knows what he's talking about. And the same I have with a couple of other friends, same situation. But of course, most people that on a day-to-day basis that have different opinions, I always look like, are they really doing it? Are they putting their money where their mouth is? And are they really showing that they can do it?
For sure, for sure. Let's talk about Nueva Asuncion. So explain the concept, explain the history, explain everything. I want to hear more.
So when I came here, I went to the old town, of course, and I saw grass on the other side of the river, and my curiosity, basically the first question was, what's on the other side? And the Paraguayans at the time, everybody told me it's Argentina. And it turned out to be wrong. And I took that like, okay, it's Argentina, it's basically the border, it's the other side. I didn't really do a follow-up on that. I believed that. And then when I met my Spanish friend, he took me on to the other side to see Nueva Asuncion, and I figured, hey, that's right in front of the old town. That's not Argentina, actually. The Argentinian border is a little bit further to the left. Mm-hmm. There's a small area, not big, but not so big in comparison to the city. That is still Paraguay. And there was literally nothing there, and it was fascinating. And the first question was, why don't they do a bridge? And he told me, yeah, exactly. He purchased 40 years ago because they said they were going to do a bridge. And there was no bridge. And I felt like I got to purchase land there. They're going to do a bridge, like eventually. It has to be the case. So I started purchasing land there. And then they said they were going to do a bridge. Like these rumors came up, you know, they were talking about it. And that was the time when I decided to sell my building and put everything on the other side because like the bridge was coming, you know.
Yeah, wow.
And when I purchased, I started to see like, I was the only one purchasing. There was nobody purchasing. And then I went to my Paraguayan friends, like these big business tycoons, even my Spanish friends, like why are you purchasing now? It's like they said they're going to do the bridge. They were laughing at me. It's like, oh, we hear that story since 35 years. They're not going to do a bridge. They just, again, they like say they're going to do it, you know. And I was convinced, like, why don't you buy? No, you go ahead, buy. Don't worry. Like we knew that story, and we're not gonna believe it. And I kept buying. And so apparently next year the bridge was going to happen. There was no bridge, you know. They was like, we told you. And I thought, okay, but next year we told you no bridge. And then I was really like thinking like, maybe I made a mistake, you know. There's no bridge. And in the end, it took 3 or 4 years later than expected. But then suddenly they went forward with the bridge.
Okay.
But it was like the pressure was rising, you know, when you're like expecting it and it's not coming, you expect it's not coming. It's the third, it's the fourth year, and like, what I'm gonna do? I put so much effort and capital in there, and they're not building the bridge. Maybe I was wrong. You're starting to get some doubts, you know, and you feel like, what should I do? Should I sell and leave? And you're like considering that.
Sure.
And luckily I didn't do it, you know. So I was holding that pressure kind of, and then the bridge came along. they moved forward. And from that moment on, of course, everything changed, But even then, when they started to build the bridge, they were basically, because, since everybody told me before there won't be a bridge, when they started to build the bridge, to not kind of lose their face, they were like saying, they're going to stop, they're not going to finish it, who knows if they're going to finish it. So they kept with that narrative, kept going kind of with this. Because at the time there was a big infrastructure project here that has been done. It was called the Metrobus, which was supposed to be public transport bus system. And they basically did all that. They started building it and then they stopped and basically undid it. It was a huge mess and a huge scandal here a couple of years ago. And basically this was 1 or 2 years before the bridge. So they basically were giving me that example, like, not gonna do it. And to be fair, there was some certain possibility, knowing the country, they're capable of this. It's like building half a bridge and not moving forward. It is possible. It is possible. It's not likely, but it's possible. You wouldn't be surprised. So, okay. So it was kind of, and the more and more the bridge advanced, of course, the more, even during the pandemic, they built that bridge. And of course, at one point, it's so advanced, they have to finish. It's like, and now the bridge opened less than 1 year ago for traffic. It got delayed 8 months, more or less, the construction, but now it's open. And of course, everything changed. So the other side of the river is that booming region now, because it's so close to downtown, so close to the city center, and it's a complete game changer for the whole country.
Well, I've been coming down to visit you for a while now, and I remember going to the other side of the river, and we had to drive all the way out and then all the way back, and it took us an hour and 20 minutes or something like that. And we went over there and there was nothing there. And we had talked about it and we had phone calls and we sat in the boardroom, we went through everything. And then when I came here again last year, and the bridge had just opened up a month before, and it took us about 7 minutes or something like that. And it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is unbelievable. People have been traveling for an hour and a half, 2 hours to get into the downtown and to get to work and things like that. And now instead they can buy a plot of land and have a place to live on the other side, and it's going to be 7 minutes or 10 minutes to go to work. And you think you have a doubling effect because you have to come into work in the morning and then go in the afternoon. The productivity that's going to save, the patience, the everything that's going to save people is just a complete game changer.
Completely. And now you have a lot of big projects ongoing on the other side of the river. Like really big ones, different type of scale. Like,
don't they have like an auditorium or a sports center, a music center or something that they're doing now?
That's a project that is under development. It's not yet under construction.
Okay.
It's called Smart Arena. It's a concert arena for 15,000 people.
It's amazing.
They are planning on the other side, but there are right now 7 big projects under construction.
Okay.
We're talking like land developments with more than 1,000 plots, apartments, different type of infrastructure, commercial houses, everything, and 7 of those. So they basically all are growing parallel, and that's beside the big infrastructure investment the government is doing on the other side, because now they're basically paving the roads, they're making the new road parallel to the Argentinian border up to the Chaco. Maybe 1 week ago, they basically confirmed they're going to do the border crossing, everything brand new, have a $30 million investment there. So it's going to change drastically. This bridge makes a huge difference, also because it's 4 lanes. So it's double the size than the old bridge.
Sure.
And on the medium long term, I'm pretty convinced there will be 1 more bridge crossing the river.
So that's an interesting point you just brought up. So it's not just about the people from Asuncion who live outside of the city who have to commute in. It's also the Argentinians who want to come over here and shop or do business or things like this. This actually shaves a massive amount of time off of their commute as well, their drive as well, if they want to go into downtown.
Yes, you have, so right at the border, you have Clorinda, which is a city with around 70,000 people. And then if you go further into Argentina, there are up to 2 million people that are coming into Paraguay using the airport or coming to purchase stuff, because it's the next biggest city they have is Asuncion, basically.
Sure.
So there's a huge Argentinian community coming into Paraguay. An interesting fact is they were not allowed to purchase land on the other side, because there was a law in place that basically restricted the border country to purchase within 40, 50 kilometers of the border.
Sure. That sounds like a leftover law from Triple Frontier type
It is, but the reason is because in the agriculture area, a lot of Brazilians, for example, purchase at the Paraguayan border. So basically to avoid them purchasing, they cannot purchase in 40, 50 kilometers to the border because they would kind of colonize it.
Exactly.
And the same law applies here on the other side of the river. This is only valid for rural areas, not for city area.
Okay.
So what happened is the Congress changed the whole area on the other side and made it a new municipality. So now it's called Nueva Asuncion. It's an own city. But it just started to work. So basically they are very improvised at the moment. They don't even have a town hall yet, nothing. So they have no office area, nothing. It's all improvised. They just have to set everything up and start building that and developing it. But with this change, now the Argentinians can purchase that were not allowed to purchase before, because there were a lot of people interested in purchasing those lands from Argentina, of course, and they all got rejected. So this information that they can purchase now is not yet basically didn't really go into their community yet. So they are just coming in little by little because they all still run on that information. We cannot purchase.
Sure. Talk to me about the mentality of the people here. Are they buying now? Were they buying while they were watching the bridge being built? Did anyone else have the forethought? Like, what's the mentality been like with this new bridge?
You know, the same, I would say even today, most of the Paraguayans, when you just randomly ask people, most of them still until today, the bridge is there, they do not cross it. They didn't cross it.
Even after 1 year of it being
because
open.
if you don't have a farm on the other side, or if you don't have to go to Argentina, for them here right now, there's nothing on the other side. You don't even have a gas station at the moment. Now they're building one. Nobody's living there at the moment. So of course, now people start little by little to be interested. They go and see the real estate projects, and then they have the big eyes, and now they start purchasing. But even until today, most people don't have that really don't take it into their consideration, because the strategic thinking and this looking forward kind of visualizing things, in my experience, it's very difficult for the locals. So once it's done, it's suddenly a big surprise that it's done. For example, I, without mentioning the name, but a famous politician here, I cannot say the name, I did a tower on the other side to Mirador, so like 11-story high, so you can go up and see everything from up there. And the tower was there for 1 year. And after 1 year, I kind of took him like, okay, let's go up. You need to see it from up there. And when we were up there, he suddenly realized, oh, from here up there, we can see everything. It was complete, like literally, he was surprised that now they would be able to get a better understanding of the area and see everything. And then it came to his mind that he should bring some of his friends up there so they could see. But even standing in front of the tower downstairs, they didn't have that thought that it might help to go up and see.
Well, I remember the first time I went up the tower, I was well impressed, because you have this massive, like, metropolitan city, and then the river, and then nothing, like just complete green. And you're like, wow, how can this not be developed? Like, this is just unbelievable. It hasn't been done until now. And I remember having conversations with you, and you're like, you couldn't find basically any other examples in the world of a capital city where they hadn't crossed the river. That just, like, it was all done 50 years ago, 70 years ago, and this is like one of the last places where it hasn't happened. So you can look at those other examples and see the development that happened in, the decade afterwards. That's wild.
Yeah. So even for example, in Europe, most of the cities hundreds of years ago crossed the river. All the big cities, as you mentioned, they did it like decades ago or centuries ago. And from my understanding, the dictatorship today, it's 36 years since the end of the dictatorship in Paraguay. So most of the infrastructure has been done during that time. So when they built that bridge during the dictatorship, the idea was there might have been a conflict with Argentina, so you built the bridge outside of the city, so it has some military strategic reason, so they cannot come into the city that easily. At that time, that's what they told me, that was the approach why they decided to build a bridge like further out of the city. And of course, the city grew into that direction. And after that, after the dictatorship, basically for almost 25 years, almost 30 years, no infrastructure has been built. So it was literally a whole country run on the same infrastructure, which of course led into a lot of trouble and all the traffic and everything. And now since 10, 15 years, let's say, that changed. Because Paraguay also started to do an international bond emission. I think it was, not sure, maybe 10 years ago or something like that, was the first time they did that since a long time. And of course, now they pour money in, they get capital in, they got a better credit rating. Now they have investment grade rating, which is also a big game changer. And now they're investing in infrastructure. And one of the major projects was that bridge.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's one of these things that like we'll be talking about it today and people will be listening. They'll be like, okay, yeah, cool. It's like, you got to come and see it. And that's why I've got, you know, like I said, close to 30 people with me this week to come and show them everything, because you know, I had been reading about it before as well and, you know, researching, but it wasn't until I saw it with my own eyes that I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. And now I'm a believer and I'm putting money where my mouth is and, you know, purchasing as much as I can because I can see as well. And as I said earlier, for me, this is the inflection point, you know, starting a couple of years ago and probably going a few years in, you know, in the future from now, this is kind of the sweet spot, you know. The downside is very little. Like in this project, it's not will the bridge be built? The bridge is built, it is used, it is, you know, I was buying right before it was built or right before it was finished, let me say.
Yeah.
And now it's there. So it's not a question of will this area be developed or, you know, anything like that. It is happening at this exact moment, but prices haven't caught up yet because not enough people know about it. Even the local population, as you just highlighted, are not really fully aware of what this all means. It's like you being in the stock market and seeing something that is not priced appropriately and you're the only one who can see it and you're getting in and you know that it's going to reflect. But you can't get that in the stock market because the margins are so small and information is so tight. But in a project like this, you can. You can literally be a regular retail investor, come down here and get a massive advantage over anybody else. It's wild.
The price gap is still very big. So I would say it's between 10, 15, 20 times cheaper than here in Asuncion, depending on the area.
Yep.
But the price gap is huge.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point. You know, you have to have a medium to long-term horizon. This isn't something where you want to invest and then in 6 months or a year, try to get out. I mean, you need to let this investment thesis play out. But if you've got 10 years in front of you and it's just such an opportunity. And I mean, we didn't even get into the holding costs or the property taxes or anything like that, but they're so minuscule that if you're purchasing this in cash, there's almost nothing else that you need to do, right? Like,
that's the good thing about it. It doesn't cause any work. You literally just keep it, hold it, and every year you can go and look and see further and further growth and development in the area because everything is, this train already left the station now. So you can basically see more and more projects coming up, everything is built. And as you said, these projects are so big, one of these projects maybe takes like a huge building. It's 2 to 3 years of construction. So it's not something that goes overnight, but because of the scale it has, because they're doing land refilling, they're doing thousands of square meters of building area. So it's super, super big.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And it's like, you just don't see these types of opportunities everywhere else. Like I remember we had a conversation and I was like, okay, but do you need to like fence it off? Do you need to maintain the grass? Do you need to cut the grass? You know, all these things. And you're like, no. Don't do anything. Don't water the grass. Don't put a fence. They'll just steal it. You know, it's just gonna go missing. Like nothing. You have no obligations. I was like, well, what if someone gets hurt on your land? They're like, no, there's no liability. There's nothing that's going to prevent you. So it's like, you know, if this is a cash purchase, as long as you're not taking out massive leverage or debt or anything like that, and it's not going to affect your lifestyle that you need the money tomorrow, then it's just like buy it and do nothing for 5 to 10 years.
It is still my biggest investment up until today. Even we are selling off part of it to put the money back into all the bigger project. It is still by far my biggest investment because I really am very bullish on it.
Me as well, me as well. Well, thank you very much for the conversation today. If people want to get a hold of you, if they want to learn more about what you do, if they want to learn more about Nueva Asuncion, where can we send them?
So I have a YouTube channel with general information about Paraguay. All the interviews are subtitled English, German, Spanish. So I'm interviewing businessmen here, expats coming in, success cases, investing here about different areas, all about Paraguay. And on the other hand, we have an email address, expat@paam.com.py. You can send me an email and we'll be right there for you.
expat@paam.com.py. Perfect. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Mikkel.